6:38. Let's go back to your calls on Syria. 0845 6060 973. Have you found me a Liberal Democrat MP yet? That's what I want to know particularly, because we haven't found any Liberal Democrats who are willing to tell us whether they're going to support the government tomorrow. Do they support military strikes on Syria, or not? 0845 6060 973. That was a Freudian slip of the tongue there, wasn't it? Baran is in Hackney. Hello, Baran.
Hi there.
Hello, what would you like to say?
Basically, I just want to highlight the fact that why Britain went to war with Afghanistan, which is very, very related to what's going on in Syria. We went to war with Afghanistan because of Al-Qaeda and the terrorist attacks in which they committed. And now the problem that we have with Syria is that the position that the British government and America and the West is taking is that they're taking the side of the terrorists in Syria. This is the fundamental problem. I mean, you've got a situation where in the north of Syria, the terrorists are literally raping, torturing, and beheading women, children, and the elderly.
What evidence? Hang on. You've made an assertion there. What evidence do you have for that?
There are plenty of evidence. You can find it on YouTube, just as you found the evidence for supposedly chemical attacks in certain areas. This is not a support of Assad in any way. I don't support any of the opposition either. They're all, in some ways or another, they're related to the terrorists that are operating, and they sympathize with the terrorists that are operating in the north of the country. Now, there's a big problem here. You've got terrorist organizations in the north of the country, and no one's saying anything about it, and no news report is ever reporting about it. And the simple fact is that any issue that concerns and that involves the Kurds has a silencing. And even now, I'm sure at some point you're going to silence my voice, just as you silence many other voices that come out, and the certain voices that you don't want to be heard through the...
Well, Baran,
I'm sure you will at some point.
Don't tempt me. I mean, you've had a good go so far. I'm not going to silence you. I'm interested to know what proof you have of what you're saying.
Plenty. You can go on the YouTube and look at al-Nusra, the beheading of Kurds. You'll see the way they are raping women. And there are plenty of this absolutely disgusting. I mean, I've come to a point that I've actually stopped watching any of these videos because they're absolutely disgusting. I mean, it's unbearable. And all these things that are happening, somehow we take certain YouTube videos that involve chemical attacks, supposed chemical attacks, and I don't believe it. It's not because of support. I'm not supporting in any way Assad regime in any way. I mean, I'm a Kurd myself, and in no way am I supporting Assad or the opposition. And to me, they're both pretty much the same. And I think, to be honest, if the West is all about human rights and about what, in terms of bringing democracy and freedom, they should be supporting the Kurds. And what they're doing at the moment in Syria is doing quite the opposite. They're funding the terrorists, they're funding the opposition, and they're doing it through Turkey. And this is not acceptable. A
lot of the reason for the Iraq invasion, or part of the reason, was also to protect the Kurds, because, of course, we all know what happened to the Kurds back in the 1980s, 1990s.
Thank you very much. In the 1980s, the Kurds were gassed. Why didn't you invade then? That's the problem. So you didn't go there to protect the Kurds. Let's not be completely disillusioned here, simply because the central government is on the side of Iran and Russia and China, you then decided to support the Kurds in the north. We're not stupid. We're quite aware of what's going on. A lot of the British public are unaware of this, but that's the reality. 10 years have passed. Why are you talking about the issue now? Why didn't you invade 10 years ago?
Well, I don't know why you keep saying, why did I invade? I mean, I don't run...
No, I'm talking in general. I'm talking in the West. I'm talking government. Obviously, you're making an argument that supposedly you're trying to help the Kurds. Why are you not helping the Kurds in Syria? Why are you helping the terrorists operating? The invasion
Baran,
will help the terrorists in the north.
Baran, I can't answer your questions. What I'm going to do, and we don't normally do this, I'm going to let you back on after 7 o'clock when we've got our panel of guests here, and they may know a little bit more about this than I do. So I hope you'll accept that I hope you do. I will do. I'm not in the business of silencing people. The only time I ever say to someone, right, we've got to stop there, is if we're coming up to a news junction. Now, I think you'll agree I've given you a good run, haven't I?
I agree, because I have said that they have silenced it. I have called LBC before, and they have silenced me in other times. And because I've said you will silence me, you decided to let me go on, so it can seem like you don't silence me.
Well, I've had enough of conspiracy theories. I've had enough of conspiracy theories. Baran, thank you very much. Jab is in High Barnet. Hello, Jab. Now, those of you who were listening in the last hour will have heard a call from Baran in Hackney, who's talking about the plight of the Syrian Kurds. I invited him to call... Oh, in fact, I think we've got him back on the line, because I wanted to put his points to our panel, because I didn't feel that I could answer them. Baran, welcome back.
Hi there, yeah.
Hello. Now, we have an esteemed panel here. Would you just like to run through very briefly, if you can, because I've got so many people I want to get on, if you can just be very brief about the point that you wanted to make, and we'll see what our panels say.
Basically, my argument was that the supposed chemical weapons that were used, I don't believe the Assad regime used it, simply because thinking of it in terms of logic. When they already have the upper hand, why should they allow an opportunity for the West to attack them? That's one part of the argument. The other part is that the opposition, if the West goes into war against Assad, what they're actually doing is supporting the terrorist organizations that are part of the opposition. Now, the most strongest part of the opposition are the terrorists. They are much more well organized than the other groups. And the probability is that once Assad is removed, you're going to have an Islamic state that's ruled, probably, which would not even be in the interest of the West.
And you also wanted to make a point about the plight of the Syrian Kurds.
Absolutely, yes. The Syrian Kurds at the moment are going through an absolute massacre. The al-Nusra is literally targeting civilians. They're slaughtering children, women, and the elderly. And literally, you can see a lot of beheadings and etc. There's a lot of videos out there on the internet. If anyone wants to watch it, which I don't really recommend, but if you want to see what they are doing, it is out there, and you would be able to have access to it.
Right, Baran, we're going to put your points to the panel. Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, the Kurdish people have suffered grievously ever since the end of the Ottoman Empire, and Baran's absolutely right. The way the Kurdish people have been treated in all parts is dreadful. And that they are, at the moment, under unremitting attack by some of the opposition groups. They weren't particularly well treated by the Assad regime, but they're even worse treated by some of the opposition groups. There is now a coming together of Kurdish groups in Turkey, Iran, Iraq and Syria, and there is a putative conference in a couple of weeks' time of all the groups, and that is of a huge significance in the sense that it's the coming together of Kurdish groups in Turkey led by the PKK, as well as the Kurdish Democratic Party and Patriotic Union of Kurdistan groups from within Iraq itself. That potentially has enormous significance. This is the one nation that was recognised, then de-recognised at the end of the First World War.
Alan Mendoza, there seems to be a lot of doubt, particularly in Baran's mind and indeed many others, about whether the chemical weapons attack was indeed authorised by the Assad regime, or whether it was somehow instigated by the rebels. Now, presumably before any military action takes place on relating to chemical weapons, we need to actually have full verification of that, do we not?
The United Nations won't be able to give you that verification. The report of the UN inspectors will simply say whether chemical weapons have been used. They will not be able to point to whether it was the Assad regime or rebels who used it. That judgment will have to come from governments based on intelligence they're getting from other sources, looking at firing patterns, those kind of activities. This whole situation reminds me dramatically about the Bosnian War. You'll remember in Bosnia you had numerous cases where there were massacres like the Sarajevo breadline massacre, and a lot of fuss then came about whether it was the Bosnian Serbs who fired the shell or the Bosnian government who fired the shell when it came to discussions about that. Ultimately, it came down to the fact that when you saw a repeated pattern, it was always the Bosnian Serbs who were the main perpetrators. Not always. There were sometimes cases when other things came out, and that pattern